2020 was a year of uncertainty, fear, trial, and error. It was also a year that saw growth, gratitude, guidance, and grit. Throughout the year, Ad Results Media sought out ways to bring our employees and teams together, and one of those initiatives was through employee-led committees. In this episode of On the Mic with Ad Results Media, Nathan Spell and I sit down with the members of the Scene Committee, whose objective is to create, plan, and implement initiatives that encourage employees to celebrate difference, inclusion, and become better allies. So let's get started.
But 2020 has shown me that I don't really have to choose which version of myself I want to wear.
I'm just always looking for different opportunities to be more present.
So office is like unlike anything I've ever been a part of in any organization I've been with.
We are different from each other, and that's okay.
All right, I want to thank everyone so much for joining us today for this very special episode of On the Mic, where we interview members of our Scene Committee. Before we get started, I'd like to do some roundtable introductions. Mo, since you're the founder, let's start with you.
Absolutely. I'm Morgan, but my preferred name is Mo. By day, I work as a senior media planner on various client accounts, and by night, I am a sound curator, creative, passionate about people, passionate about purpose, and passionate about words. Thank you for having me.
Hi, my name is John. I'm the media research coordinator here at Ad Results Media. I don't have as an exciting nightlife, I don't think, as Mo does. But in my off time, I enjoy cooking. I enjoy reading and writing. I do a little bit of painting here and there, and just anything that catches my interest. Really. Thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm Blake Geary. I am a media planner here at Ad Results. Been here for about a year and a half now.
And I'm Ari. I'm a copywriter with Ad Results Media, helping craft scripts and copy direction for our clients. And in the off hours, I am a writer and roller skater.
So I kind of want to start off with you, Mo. As the founder of Scene, can you tell us a little bit about the committee and what inspired you to take on this initiative?
I think more than anything, it's the state of the world, just with the senseless police killings and the pandemic, the activism. It was almost impossible for me to continue to be within an organization without having these kind of conversations. Before 2020, it was always very important for me to separate my personal life from my professional life. And I never wanted to blend the two. Like when I came to work, I only wanted people to know me as Morgan. And, I work at Ad Results, I do media. And when I go outside of that, I'm Mo and I'm this and I'm that. And I never wanted to blend the two worlds. And I was okay with that. But 2020 has shown me that I don't really have to choose which version of myself I want to wear because I am just as valuable and just as important as everyone else's experiences. I guess in so many ways I felt like I needed to mute a part of myself in order to fit within an organizational structure. Not that anyone was making me feel that way. I think by default I just felt like I had to always kind of condense myself a little bit and just be leery about the kind of conversations that I was having, outside of work. And so with the pandemic and the killings and just the state of the world, I was like, man, I really want to have these conversations, but I'm afraid to. I don't know how people are going to respond to this within the workplace. And once I saw Kurt and Marshall make that statement in the Slack channel, basically acknowledging the experience and what was happening in the world and making themselves available to the opportunity to create space for everyone, that's when I felt I needed to call them to action and be like, hey, are we going to put some movement behind this, or is this just going to be a moment? And I was very afraid to do that just because you think words like equality and inclusion and diversity and all these words, these power words, you feel like everyone is gonna align and believe in the purpose, but we all have our different views, we all have our different opinions. Um, and so I just, mustered up the courage and surrendered to my fears and just threw the idea out there. And Kurt was very receptive. I went straight to Kurt. Like I didn't go to anybody else. I wrote him personally and was like, hey, this is how I feel. And he was like, whatever you want to do. let's make it happen. Um, so yeah, I'm very, more than anything, I just want to say that I'm very blessed to have and honored to have the space to be able to create these kind of conversations and to be supported by such a strong group of allies and people that have never made me feel like I'm just isolated on an island trying to have these conversations. So
I'm curious to hear what drew the rest of you to this committee as well. Ari, why don't we start with you?
I'm just always looking for different opportunities to be more present. First of all, to be present is a duty for representation. So, as an immigrant, a woman, and a minority, I do feel that there is a little bit of responsibility on myself to say, hey, I'm here, I exist. And secondly, to be present to witness for other people so that they know that their experience, their struggles, and their unique viewpoints are heard and are seen. And Mo's vision for the committee was so clearly aligned with that mission of mine that I was really just ecstatic to be part of it.
Kind of like what Mo alluded to earlier. I mean, first off, this is like unlike anything I've ever been a part of in any organization I've been with. Usually, when it comes to diversity, the conversation is it's kind of tiptoed around. Everyone approaches it with this kind of like, we want to speak on it, but not too much because we'll get in trouble. And so this is the first kind of group of its kind that I've seen that is so ready to tackle that like head on, which I appreciate. um it's as you were saying, it's so easy to kind of lose your personal self when you're part of an organization. And that's based upon many different things, like just the way the country's always been, the way like the American workplace has always been. But regardless of reason, that can be disheartening at times. You can come into your 9 to 5 and work every day and feel like the real you isn't out there. Like no one knows that person who does A, B, or C. They just know the person that does it, and that's it. And so this, I definitely saw this as an opportunity to like get to know my coworkers in a more in a deeper fashion, I guess, in a way that's a little less surface level, a little less just like, oh, happy Monday, happy Friday, like the bare bones you get in a normal workplace, and also find out the different qualities about them that lends its diversity to our workplace. Like we always tend to hear like childhood stories around like holiday season time, or when we have like a big potluck at the office or something like that. But you don't get to know that kind of backgrounds and experiences beyond those kind of cursory times. So definitely I think overall I just see it as this great opportunity to bring the organization closer with one another and to understand the different things that we each value and why we hold those things dear, for sure.
I just want to say thank you for having me. Thanks for Mo for thinking of me to be here. I appreciate you guys. Similar to Mo's thread, it was, completely for me, at least, motivated by the senseless murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. It really, I think, the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic and isolated from each other in terms of just spatially being away from the people we love, our appointed communities. We had the internet and we had the media and we had all of these things happening, and really nobody to talk to about it, or not a way to come together with some kind of, okay, let's address this. And to John's point, coming to work every day and knowing, we call ourselves the armed fam, and not addressing these things happening didn't feel right, didn't sit right with me at all, as an animal rights activist, as a person with empathy who cares for other people. It's just something that didn't fit. And so whenever Mo came to the larger organization with the idea for the scene committee, I was ecstatic to be a part of it and contribute to the conversation and in some kind of meaningful way.
I think it's cool hearing how you guys share a lot of this sort of internal motivation for joining. I'm curious what words like diversity and equity and inclusion mean to each of you. So maybe if we start with Mo again, what do those words mean to you?
Diversity to me is, I mean, it's a played out word. It's been played out for many, many years. I think it's like a placeholder. It's just a way to fulfill the quota or to fulfill the expectation or the appropriate perception. I don't really have to abide or really hold myself accountable to the root of difference. So when I was framing how I wanted to um, really call it, like, what do I want to call this, and what type of power words do I want to use to create that synchronicity? I was very turned off by the word diversity, and I know that that's the norm. But Kurt was like, "Well, what kind of words would you use? Like, how would you replace, you know?" And I was like, "Difference." When we think about people that are different from us, it's literally the difference in skin tone, the difference in sexual orientation, the difference in gender, the difference in what I eat, vegetarian versus pescatarian. Like, all these differences is what seems to be the most chaotic for people to wrap their minds around, that we are different from each other and that's okay. That's fair, and that your experience, despite your difference, still matters. And so difference is a word that I've really tried to really continuously use, with the hopes that we can kind of phase out this word diversity altogether. And inclusion, difference, inclusion, equity, all of these things are just words if there are no actions or no real conversations happening, no praxis happening behind it. So even equity, like, I feel like my two power words is difference and inclusion, because that to me is saying you're different, but I'm still including you. And it's as simple, to me, in my mind, it's as simple as that.
Just to open that up a little bit, do you guys also see that sort of dichotomy between the word like diversity and the word like difference? How it seems like a similar word, but diversity has all this other baggage with it. Do you guys feel the same way? Just to be open to any other viewpoints you guys might have.
I definitely feel that way. I think a lot of times when those words get used, they're very well intentioned, but I think that when you do want to use those words, you have to acknowledge that it always has to be more than acknowledgement, that someone different from you exists, but also that you are giving them the opportunity to be understood and that you're helping them gain an equal platform to share what they bring from their community.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I think, like Mo said, diversity is kind of a buzzword in business right now, and how we put actions behind ensuring that our differences and experiences are being brought to the table and being included. You can have, like, Iko Bethia said on the Brene Brown podcast, you can have diversity without having inclusion, but you can't have inclusion without having diversity. And equity is the reason that we talk about these things in the first place. Historically, we have othered people and not treated them with the value that they deserve, depending on their, protected class kind of, the way that they identify or the way that the world identifies them. So those are all important things that we talk about, but more important that we show up to actually do something and put action behind.
Yeah, I find it kind of funny that the word diversity is kind of this, like, as they've mentioned, this buzzword. It's like kind of this thing you see in corporate culture as kind of like this, like, I don't want to say seal of approval, but like when you think of this idea of like, oh, we have a diversity program or this and that, like it's like almost as like, oh, we're good. But in actuality, I think diversity is just the base state of human life. I think just all human beings are just inherently different. I mean, there's a reason they use that cliche of like snowflakes, how all human beings are supposed to be like snowflakes, how they're all the same, but each one's completely different. But it's very true. It's regardless of where you come from or what your background is, or your race or religion or sexual orientation or anything, it makes up a part of who you are, and it's going to be different than the next person over. And so I feel like that's where inclusion comes in. I think that's when we need to start thinking about inclusivity. Because at first you have to acknowledge that not all human beings they're going to appeal, not necessarily appeal, but fit a certain model of person, especially when it comes to in the workplace. We have to kind of throw those notions of like the model employee out the window, because what you bring into a job is going to be largely dependent on your experiences, and what those experiences are built upon are what makes you different, and how other people perceive those differences in you. But no, inclusion's the more important part of that for me personally, is just the fact that it's so easy to just like not talk about what makes us different, because it's a scary topic to approach. But at the end of the day, it does us a disservice, because we're kind of just putting that away in the attic and ignoring it. We're not necessarily celebrating as those things as we should be.
So I know that we've touched on kind of how it's common to talk about the importance of diversity and the importance of inclusion, and how a lot of workplaces may acknowledge it or may say, yeah, we're diverse, yeah, we're super inclusive, but maybe they're not taking the action to kind of hold up those statements. What have you found is the most challenging part of creating an inclusive environment?
My biggest challenge has been being in the forefront in this way and being seen, period. There's a risk always involved with advocating anything amongst a group of 80 plus people who may or may not have the same perspective or understanding as you. When I was literally shaking my anxiety when I was presenting during the town hall, wanting to invite people in, thinking like, is anybody going to care about this? Like, does this matter? Is this just me? Because, not having these conversations outside of the few people that, you may be cool with outside of work, you don't really know where people stand or how they're going to respond to you, if there's going to be backlash. Like, what's the embrace going to be like, if any? And so that part was the most complicated for me. And then once I saw the outpour, I was like, wow, okay, this is amazing. And then once I saw certain people kind of turning away, I'm like, wow, am I offending people? Like, I started to go into these different emotions were just kind of coming up, because I've opened this can of worms about inclusion. And now, am I going to be censored? And am I only going to be able to go so far? Are we only going to be able to go so far? There's just so many. And I think that feeling is still kind of there in the pocket, because like everyone has said, we don't really know how people are going to respond to inclusion when it's at this level of, so how y'all feeling today? Like on the Slack channel, like what's good? Like, I've had a horrible week. I've been anxious. My hands have been, I didn't think I was going to get out of bed. Like, these are the kind of conversations that we're having, hyper vulnerable, non-censored, like really truth telling moments. And you just never know how someone is going to respond to that type of space. But I don't know how to make it shallow, because the experience is not shallow in any way. Like, being a Black, queer, masculine presenting woman, eccentric with tattoos and just all these ways of being, constantly being misgendered outside of the societal norms. I'm like, A, I don't even want to teach y'all this. I don't even want to talk to y'all about this, because y'all should really know how to look this up for yourselves and really gain the awareness. So one part of me is, I'm not responsible for your ignorance, right? But then the other part of me is like, wow, okay, let me kind of calm it down, and let me open the space, and let's just have the conversations, and let me try to practice mercy. Let me try to practice understanding. Let me try to practice community. Everything that I want somebody to practice for me, I want to practice that for someone else, even if I feel like they've offended me in some kind of way. And so I think that that level of intensity of emotion just comes by way of the word inclusion, period. And when you add workplace, HR on top of that, it adds an entire another level of caution and bravery that's required.
Yeah, Mo's right. It takes a lot of courage to do that kind of thing. And shout out to you for like I said, for starting this whole thing. I remember I want to say we had a conversation about this during one of our one-on-ones before it like launched. And I said something to the effect of like, "Oh wow, I'm glad you're doing this, because I couldn't do it." Like that's terrifying to me. And like But at the same time, I'm not to make assumptions, but I'm sure I'm just as passionate about the subject matter as you are. And so, but like, there's that level of like, oh, this is my job. I could be jeopardizing my career if I say, oh, hey, can I be heard, please? And so that's difficult. It's a difficult line to toe for sure. And it takes a certain level of being able to put yourself into other people's perspectives as well. Like I have my own experience, and we each all have our own experiences, and it's easy to discount others or to look at someone from a completely different walk of life and just look at the surface level perception of them and think, oh, they don't know what I've been through, they don't understand the kind of stuff I've seen. When in actuality, you don't know that until you get to know the person. So that's an important part of it as well, kind of making sure it like um it's like the rest of the panel's been saying, like it's not enough just to show up. You've actually got to do the work, and you actually have to like you know be willing to be willing to put your job at stake, or be willing to have whatever it takes to make your voice heard, regardless of whatever any kind of blowback you might receive from it.
It's all of what Mo said. It's all of what John said. It's the anxieties around how do my experiences compare to these people's experiences, and dealing with my own privilege, my own fragility, understanding the scope that we have to work within. We as employees can show up and come into the same room and say, like, these are things that we care about. But also, there's an aspect of really, if I've learned anything from podcasting and the podcast Nice White Parents, it's when white people are trying to solve the problem. You're not solving the problem because you're not addressing the needs of others. This is not a problem that marginalized communities can solve, because obviously that's the whole problem, white supremacy. So knowing where the members of this committee stop and where leadership begins, and how to bridge that gap and put some, we can how to make things more transformational versus just transactional. We're not just showing up to we have a difference inclusion committee, but we have a committee that is benefiting the needs and the diverse backgrounds and experiences of everyone here, and addressing the fact that maybe they haven't been treated the same, or they have had different entire lives that we just don't know about. So I think that's been the most difficult thing for me, knowing each time I come into a meeting, or I post in the Slack channel, just wanting to be thoughtful. And also, you just like, there's this inherent feeling of like, I'm going to step on toes. I'm going to step on people's toes. It's for the best. But there's a lot of discomfort in that. And just, like they said, having courage, being called to courage and showing up anyway.
I think another challenge that we have is being able to create a community where everybody feels empowered to have ongoing participation. So sometimes some diversity initiatives don't really gain momentum because they don't make an effort beyond one social media post, or after one go, they don't keep it top of mind on top of all the work that we have to do. I think everyone on the committee, and Mo especially, has been wonderful so far, because we've created an internal organization where we can share new resources as we find them, share different educational materials as we learn about them, so that we can have more meaningful and, like Mo said, more candid, honest conversations about our human experiences as a group that's trying to survive and work our way through the world in different ways. And I think it's definitely a struggle. It is definitely a struggle, because you have to create an environment where people are active enough to flourish and continue to flourish.
Ari raises a really good point. I hadn't really thought about. It's just the fact that because the group is so diverse and everyone there is, like all in, although it takes a lot to make, consistent diversity and inclusion a thing in a workplace, it's made easier by the entire scene committee and how everyone there is constantly, uplifting each other. And even if you're not super, brave to bring something up to the committee, and when you see all these other people talking about things that are important to them, it builds that courage within yourself. It definitely has for me, for sure. Like, I'm not normally an outspoken person when it comes to people I work with, but I've definitely, through the scene committee and through just working with people in general in the organization and getting to know them more closely, that I've become better at that. Just by being part of the group and being there, witnessing other people, fighting for the same thing, essentially.
So I'm curious, as you guys are discussing some of the challenges you've been facing, some of the things that are brought up, sort of consistency, is this this place where you're having to be vulnerable, you're having to take that risk, you're having to act courageously, to sort of bridge that gap that inclusivity requires, right? We have to understand these people who are different from us in order to include everyone and come together. So, I'm curious how y'all are approaching coming to an understanding of the perspectives that, your peers from different backgrounds have, and what is the goal from that experience? What do you guys really see as the sort of the overarching sort of goal of that?
We're creating a safe space digitally for us to get to know one another, starting with, what's the origin of your name? Like, why do you prefer to be called this? I mean, just really stripping it down to the bare bones of having conversations with people and creating a space for people to feel like they can engage, or they can feel empowered, or they could just, even if they say nothing, they're still experiencing the content, the conversations, and maybe, absorbing something valuable and beneficial and purposeful for themselves. And so far it's been less about the check boxes, right? Like, here's our to-do list, here are all the initiatives that we want to do, here's what's going to be great on LinkedIn, Instagram, and all these things. And it's more just about, like, y'all, like, how y'all feeling today? Like, really just having a casual conversation with people that we might sit 6 feet away from in the office and know nothing about them outside of the basic work stuff. And everyone decided to be here, right? So we don't have to filter through, like, ooh, am I, when we're in the channel because everyone wants to be here. They're choosing freely to be in this space, and to engage in this way. And so at first I felt a little insecure about the scene committee as of since the launch. We've been kind of moving more so like a support group, a community group, and just having these conversations. And so I was like, man, I'm kind of insecure because I'm comparing to the wellness committee, the cycling committee, the social committee, and everyone's constantly rolling out these initiatives. And I'm like, okay, Mo, like, relax. This is a different kind of framework. This is a different need. And we can't just, I feel like we have to have this layer of getting to know one another and trusting each other, right? Like, I have to develop trust. People have to develop trust in me. Like, Nathan, for real, like, if you want to get in on the scene committee Slack channel, you don't even have to be in the committee. If you just want to get in on the conversation, let me know. Because people are very naked, in the rawest sense. And right now that's the focus, but we do have some initiatives that are in the works. But beyond the tangible initiatives, I feel full and I feel seen by knowing that if I'm alone in my apartment and I just want to vent, or if I want to, like, have a conversation, I can go to the Scene Slack channel and engage, and people will support me and talk back and see me.
I guess the follow up there is, I know you mentioned that there are some big differences. Like, are there initiatives that you wanted to talk about as well, or are those sort of still in the works as far as beyond just like growing that community and getting that trust formed up front?
We have 3 initiatives. One that's coming up, and Lindsay's going to be our first amazing guest. It's like the 10 things we don't know about you. So as a committee, we all came together and, added in some questions and things that we would like to ask. And it's basically just like a highlight, a way for why the entire organization to get a better sense of like who these people are, and just find out some really cool information about people. Um, we are creating an inclusive calendar. Blake has done an amazing job really running point on getting this initiative situated. But her and Kylie are going to be distributing a survey so that we can gauge if people feel represented, in their belief system. Specifically me, um, it's it's very important for me to, moving forward, like really honor Martin Luther King Day, Juneteenth celebration, and just saying like, hey, this is a part of my experience, my heritage, my ancestry, and I would like to see this acknowledged organizationally, right? And so there might be other holidays that employees may feel are absent, and we want to give them an opportunity to express that. And then the last one that we're working on, trying to get it together, hopefully we can get it done by the end of this year, is just providing support and charity to outside organizations. So whether that's writing letters to nursing home, or similar to what the social committee did last year. Or there's another organization called the Circles of Mother, and it's mothers for mothers that have lost their children to gun violence. In what way can we help aid that cause? So we have some things that are in the works. They're on the timeline, but I am a very free-flowing person. I go by the energy. And this is the kind of work that isn't a period. It's a semicolon. It's going to always continue. So I want to make sure that we are all, when we do these initiatives and put this work out, that we're present, we're invested, and we're doing it at the highest level. So if we all can't contribute that, then I would us just rather, pause until we can.
Now, Mo, I know that you and I have been with Ad Results for a while. And without going into too much detail, I think it's pretty safe to say that we've seen some pretty significant culture changes within the organization over the past few years. So when you brought the idea of the scene committee up, I couldn't think of someone better to kind of oversee this new initiative. What do you ultimately hope to bring to Ad Results Media?
Ooh, you took me back, Lindsay, to the very beginning. I think I just want to bring the possibility to the organization, like the possibility that people can change their mindset even after generations and generations and generations of trauma, or being rooted in their own belief systems and their traditions and their behaviors. I want to bring forth the possibility that progressive change can happen, and we as the employees and the people, we really have the voice, but we also have the visibility. And you know what, to be completely honest, I was like, y'all, if I do, like, I'm talking to my partner, I'm like, baby, if I do this, like, you think they gonna fire me? Just because you just never know. Like, I'm like, will I be targeted? Not applying it specifically to Our Results Media as an organization, but like John said, corporate America, corporate white America. This is the mentality. Like, I don't want to be all Angela Davis right now, but I was very nervous, scared that I wasn't going to be able to create this space without consequence. And I know that that's a result of my generational trauma, that whenever I stand in the forefront of something, that there's going to be a consequence if it shakes up the flavor a little bit too much. So regardless of the outcome, now and forevermore, I just want to create the possibility that people can come into the workspace and be them 100% selves respectfully, but still able to talk casually at the lunch table about their girlfriend, or, if they're in a homosexual relationship, or if they're transitioning into another gender, or if they're gender nonconforming and they have different pronouns, or, if they are an animal activist or a vegetarian, whatever quirks, like there's a young man that just started today, and he was doing his 15 things in our planners meeting. He was like, I love all the weird sports that no one likes, like hockey and um, pole vaulting. And I was thinking, why is that weird? Like what makes that weird? What makes that outside of the norm? And the fact that we have to kind of have this disclaimer, this precursor to what we naturally and authentically move into. I want to create the possibility that we don't have to do that. We can show up exactly as we are. We can arrive exactly as we are, and we're not tolerated, and we don't have to be understood, but we can be respected and we can be accepted. And that's, if I can do that, I'm gravy, like the kids say.
Well, it obviously takes a lot of courage. I think hearing you share that sort of dilemma that you had, even verbalizing it with your partner, I think it's really important for people to keep in mind that that is a legitimate thought. Like there is this concern that you guys have talked about with corporate America and how it can feel very daunting to stand up and say, hey, this is something that's needed. Even though it's so obvious that it is something that's needed in so many organizations. So I guess all that being said, the question that I wanted to ask is how or what advice would you give to other organizations or maybe other people like yourselves in other organizations who are thinking about launching something similar to Scene in their own workspace?
I'd like to take this one, if you don't mind, Mo. I just want to say I am grateful, just as everybody has stated, that Mo took this on. This was initially when the Scene committee was, a new idea, a freshly baked idea. I wanted to reiterate to Mo that I was grateful to her for bringing it about, but it was not her responsibility to educate us, to, bring us to an understanding. Yet she did facilitate this community. So I would say that it's important that leadership takes this on, and this is something that they prioritize and bring to their employees, knowing that this affects everyone, and they have the most power to create change, to create goals, to hold the agency at large accountable to those goals. So, start the conversation, start it now, start it and the uppermost levels, and see who you can get involved.
I think some other advice that I would have for other organizations is to just open up the floor to everybody, not just a select few leaders, but to really allow others to take up space and to be heard, but also at the same time to give time for people to ask questions, to respond with their own stories, because being able to be more inclusive isn't just about giving somebody a soapbox, but it's about being able to share those stories and understand that the same way that your personal story has impacted your growth as a person, that same exact experience happens to other people, and their experience is just as valid and just as meaningful to their growth. So the more that we have the opportunity and the space and the time to learn from other people, we can grow not only as individuals for ourselves, but as a community, because we have a shared well to draw from for inspiration and for joy.
I think that's a large part of that is the whole idea of the Scene committee is like providing all these different voices into one unique channel. And the best part of having all these different varied voices is that it makes the larger conversation more interesting and dynamic, and you get to learn different things, and you get to even find new interests that you may hold, and had you not, or had you would have not have come across them had you not joined this specific committee or a similar committee in your own organization. But the biggest piece of advice I have to give is just to be genuine, I guess. Just to be real about it. Don't make it obligatory. Don't make it this like, oh, we do this 1 week in January and then we all sign the forms and that was it for the year. Like seriously, if you're gonna do it, if you're gonna even attempt something like it, come with a willingness and an openness to learn and I suppose is to face the scarier aspects of difference and newness, as most people are kind of apt to shy away from. But no, just go all in with it. Give it your, give it the attention it would deserve. Something like this, because if you cultivate it correctly, I think it'll add more to your organization than any run of the mill slideshow I ever would have done.
Well, unless Mo, if you had any more parting advice for someone who's thinking through this as well.
I mean, John, Blake, and Ari, they really articulated it perfectly. I couldn't have said it better myself. So thank you. Thank you, three. Always on it.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe for updates on future episodes and leave us a comment with your feedback, questions, or ideas for future segments. If you would like more info on Ad Results Media and what we do, please visit us online at adresultsmedia.com. This podcast is an Ad Results Media production.